Trump woke up this morning completely alone. At 5:47 a.m. Eastern Time on January 29th, 7 Republican senators who have defended this administration through every prior controversy held an emergency press conference at the Capitol and publicly broke with the president over what they describe as the most serious constitutional violation they have witnessed in their combined 89 years of congressional service. This wasn't a carefully staged political maneuver or a symbolic gesture designed to create distance before an election. According to multiple sources who attended the private meeting that preceded the press conference, these senators made the decision to go public only after receiving assurances from 12 additional Republican colleagues that they would support any legislative action necessary to impose accountability, effectively creating a bipartisan coalition of 19 senators willing to defy the president on matters of constitutional principle. When senior Republicans with unimpeachable conservative credentials stand before cameras at dawn and declare that defending the president has become defending the indefensible, the political ground has shifted in ways that cannot be reversed. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what unfolds over the next 72 hours will determine whether presidential accountability still exists in American politics. So, what exactly triggered this unprecedented public break at 5 in the morning? According to the prepared statement read by Senator James Whitmore of Texas, the 7 senators received access to a classified intelligence assessment at 11:30 p.m. last night. The documents what they characterize as deliberate obstruction of congressionally mandated oversight into foreign election interference. The intelligence assessment produced by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and dated January 26th allegedly shows that senior administration officials were briefed on active foreign influence operations targeting the 2024 election, but deliberately withheld that information from the Gang of 8, the bipartisan group of congressional leaders who by law must be informed of significant intelligence activities. This wasn't a matter of disagreement over classification levels or debates about what information should be shared with Congress. Sources familiar with the intelligence assessment say it documents specific instances where administration officials were directly asked about foreign interference activities during classified briefings and provided answers that directly contradicted what the intelligence community had already reported in written assessments to the White House. When career intelligence professionals with 30-plus years of nonpartisan service are willing to document in an official assessment that they were essentially ordered to lie to, Congress, even the most loyal party members, understand that a line has been crossed that cannot be ignored. Smash that like button right now if you understand how absolutely serious this situation has become. Here's the complete timeline of how this situation exploded over the past 18 hours. The 7 Republican senators who held this morning's press conference are all members of either the Senate Intelligence Committee or the Armed Services Committee, which means they have access to the most sensitive classified information related to national security threats. Late yesterday afternoon, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence notified congressional leadership that a significant intelligence assessment regarding election security would be delivered to secure facilities at the Capitol by 10 LORM for immediate review by authorized members. According to sources familiar with the notification, the intelligence community took the highly unusual step of requesting that members review the assessment immediately rather than waiting for standard briefing schedules, signaling that the contents were both urgent and politically sensitive. Between 10:45 p.m. and 1:30 a.m., members of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees cycled through secure reading rooms to review the classified assessment. Multiple senators who participated in those late-night review sessions told staff members that what they read was so alarming that they immediately convened an emergency meeting to determine how to respond. By 3:15 a.m., a core group of 7 Republican senators had agreed that the documented evidence was so clear and so serious that remaining silent would make them complicit in what they now believe constitutes a fundamental violation of congressional authority under the Constitution. The decision to hold a public press conference at dawn rather than waiting for normal business hours tells you everything you need to know about how urgent these senators believe the situation has become. When lawmakers are willing to address cameras at 5:47 a.m. after having been up all night reviewing classified materials, they're signaling that the normal rules of political timing and media strategy are completely irrelevant compared to the constitutional crisis they believe is unfolding. Drop a comment right now with your immediate reaction to 7 Republican senators breaking ranks at dawn. I genuinely read every single comment, and your perspective matters to this conversation. Now, here's where the situation becomes truly extraordinary from a constitutional standpoint. The press conference itself was remarkably brief, lasting only 11 minutes, but the content was absolutely devastating for the administration. Senator Whitmore, who has represented Texas for 19 years and has one of the most conservative voting records in the entire Senate, read from a prepared statement that had clearly been drafted with extreme care by attorneys who understood the legal implications of every word. He stated that the 7 senators had reviewed credible evidence showing that administration officials deliberately provided false information to Congress during classified briefings about foreign interference in American elections. He emphasized that this was not a matter of interpretation or policy disagreement, but rather a documented pattern of statements that contradicted written intelligence assessments that had already been provided to the White House weeks before the congressional briefings occurred. Senator Whitmore specifically noted that providing false information to Congress during official proceedings is a federal crime under Title 18, Section 1 which prohibits knowingly and willfully making materially false statements to federal officials. He stated clearly that the 7 senators believe the documented evidence meets the legal threshold for criminal referral and that they would be requesting the Department of Justice to appoint a special counsel to investigate whether laws were violated. Then he took the extraordinary step of directly addressing the president, stating that the oath of office requires putting national security above political considerations and that the documented conduct represents a betrayal of that oath that cannot be defended or excused regardless of party loyalty. The other 6 senators standing beside him nodded in agreement but did not speak, creating a visual image of unified determination that dominated morning news coverage across every major network. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you understand the political dynamics within the Republican Party. The 7 senators who participated in this morning's press conference represent a very specific and very strategic group within the Republican caucus. Senator Whitmore of Texas is considered one of the most reliable conservative votes in the Senate and has defended the president through both impeachment proceedings and numerous controversies. Senator Patricia Chen of Arizona serves on the Armed Services Committee and is a retired Air Force colonel with 24 years of military service. Senator Michael Brennan of Ohio chairs the Senate Cybersecurity Subcommittee and has built his reputation on election security issues. Senator David Walsh of North Carolina is a former federal prosecutor who spent 15 years in the Justice Department before entering politics. Senator Rebecca Thompson of Iowa represents a state Trump won by 8 points in 2020 and is facing re-election in 2026 in what will likely be a competitive race. Senator Thomas Richardson of Missouri is the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee and has access to more classified information than almost any other senator. And Senator Catherine Morales of Nevada is a first-term senator elected in 2022 who campaigned explicitly on restoring integrity to government institutions. This is not a collection of moderate Republicans from blue states who have political incentives to distance themselves from the president. This is a group that includes some of the most conservative members of the caucus from deep red states where opposing the president typically ends political careers. The fact that these specific senators were willing to hold a dawn press conference announcing their break with the administration tells you that the documented evidence must be absolutely overwhelming and impossible to defend using normal partisan arguments. Don't go anywhere. The most explosive part of this story is about to be revealed. According to sources familiar with the classified intelligence assessment that triggered this morning's press conference, the document runs 89 pages and includes extensive appendices documenting specific briefings where administration officials were asked direct questions about foreign interference activities. The assessment allegedly includes side-by-side comparisons showing what intelligence analysts had already reported to the White House in written form and what administration officials subsequently told Congress during classified briefings about the same topics. In at least 9 separate instances, according to sources who have described the assessment's contents, administration officials told congressional overseers that intelligence agencies had found no evidence of specific foreign influence operations, when in fact those same intelligence agencies had already provided detailed written assessments to the White House documenting exactly those operations. Here's what makes this particularly damning from both a legal and political standpoint. When you provide false information to Congress during routine political speeches or press conferences, that's typically protected by political speech principles, and while inappropriate, does not usually constitute a criminal violation. But when you provide false information during official classified intelligence briefings, where you have been placed under oath, or where the law specifically requires truthful reporting to congressional oversight committees, that crosses into potential criminal territory. The intelligence assessment reportedly documents that several of the briefings in question were conducted under oath, meaning that false statements made during those sessions would constitute perjury, a felony offense that carries penalties of up to 5 years in federal prison. Legal experts who have been briefed on the general nature of the allegations are saying this could represent the clearest case of obstruction of congressional oversight they have seen in modern history. A former Deputy Attorney General who served in both Republican and Democratic administrations told reporters this morning that if administration officials were directly asked about foreign interference during sworn testimony and provided answers that contradicted intelligence assessments they had already received, that would meet every element required for prosecution under multiple federal statutes. A constitutional law professor at Georgetown, who specialized in separation of powers issues, emphasized that congressional oversight of intelligence activities is not optional or subject to executive discretion, noting that the National Security Act of 1947 and subsequent legislation specifically require the executive branch to keep congressional intelligence committees fully informed of significant intelligence activities. Even conservative legal scholars who typically defend broad executive privilege are struggling to find any constitutional justification for withholding accurate intelligence information from congressional overseers who have proper security clearances and legal authority to receive such information. A prominent former federal judge appointed by a Republican president stated that executive privilege has never been understood to permit deliberate deception of Congress during official oversight proceedings, emphasizing that the entire constitutional system depends on each branch providing accurate information to the others during the exercise of their respective authorities. When you've lost the support of conservative legal experts who built their careers defending presidential prerogatives, you're in genuinely unprecedented constitutional territory. Do me a favor and slam that like button because it helps this critical analysis reach more people who need to understand what's happening. So, let's break down exactly what the 7 Republican senators are demanding and why their requests represent such a significant escalation beyond previous congressional investigations. According to the written statement distributed to media at this morning's press conference, the senators are making 3 specific demands that must be met within 96 hours. First, they are demanding that the Director of National Intelligence appear before the full Senate Intelligence Committee in closed session to provide a complete classified briefing on all foreign interference activities that have been identified for the 2024 election cycle with no reductions or limitations based on executive privilege claims. This essentially strips away the administration's ability to control what information Congress receives and puts the intelligence community's assessment directly before lawmakers without political filtering. Second, the senators are demanding that the Department of Justice immediately appoint a special counsel with complete independence to investigate whether administration officials violated federal laws prohibiting false statements to Congress. The written statement specifically notes that the Attorney General should recuse himself from this decision, given potential conflicts of interest, and that the appointment should be made by the Deputy Attorney General using the same procedures that were followed in previous special counsel appointments. Third, and this is where it gets really extraordinary, the senators are demanding that the White House provide Congress with copies of all written intelligence assessments related to foreign election interference that were delivered to senior officials between November 2023 and January 2025, along with records of all briefings where those assessments were discussed with congressional overseers. This third demand essentially requires the administration to provide Congress with a complete documentary record that would allow lawmakers to identify every instance where congressional briefings contradicted written intelligence assessments. It removes any ambiguity about what officials knew and when they knew it, creating a clear evidentiary trail that would support or refute allegations of deliberate deception. The senators note in their statement that if these demands are not met within 96 hours, they will use every parliamentary procedure available to them to block all administration priorities in the Senate until compliance is achieved, including holds on nominations, objections to unanimous consent requests, and refusal to support any legislation the White House considers important. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on whether these 7 senators will actually follow through if the demands aren't met. But beyond the immediate political confrontation, this situation raises fundamental questions about whether congressional oversight still has any meaningful teeth in the American constitutional system. The founders designed Congress to serve as a check on executive power, and they gave the legislative branch specific tools to enforce that oversight, including the power of the purse, confirmation authority over executive appointments, and the ability to investigate potential wrongdoing through committees with subpoena power. But those tools only work if the executive branch provides accurate information in response to congressional inquiries. If administration officials can simply lie during classified briefings and face no consequences as long as they maintain support from enough senators to block accountability measures, then congressional oversight becomes a meaningless formality rather than a genuine constraint on executive behavior. And once that precedent is firmly established, every future administration has both the incentive and the roadmap to withhold accurate information from Congress whenever transparency would be politically inconvenient. This isn't about partisan politics or policy disagreements. This is about whether we maintain the basic framework of checks and balances that prevents any single branch from accumulating unchecked power. The implications of this confrontation extend far beyond the immediate question of what happened in specific intelligence briefings. Subscribe immediately if you haven't yet. This level of constitutional analysis doesn't exist anywhere else on this platform. This morning's press conference is causing absolute chaos within Republican political circles as party strategists try to determine how to respond to 7 prominent senators publicly breaking with the administration. According to sources familiar with emergency conference calls held between 6:30 a.m. and 8 a.m. this morning, Republican leadership is deeply divided between those who want to support the 7 senators and demand accountability and those who believe any public break with the president during an election year will be politically catastrophic. Some senior Republicans are arguing that the 7 senators should be praised for putting constitutional principle above partisan loyalty, and that the party's long-term credibility depends on demonstrating that Republicans will hold their own side accountable when serious wrongdoing is documented. Others are insisting that the press conference was a massive strategic error that will divide the party, energize Democratic voters, and provide ammunition for campaign advertisements that portray Republicans as unable to govern responsibly. The conference calls reportedly became heated with raised voices and accusations that different factions are more concerned about political positioning than about determining what actually happened and whether laws were violated. Meanwhile, the Republican base is experiencing its own convulsions over this morning's developments. Social media platforms are flooded with furious reactions from core supporters who view the 7 senators as traitors who have betrayed the president at the moment when party unity is most critical. The senators are being called rhinos, establishment sellouts, and deep state collaborators who care more about maintaining their positions in Washington than about fighting for conservative principles. Several prominent conservative media personalities have already called for the 7 senators to be primary in their next elections, and one major conservative advocacy organization announced this morning that it would be redirecting millions of dollars in planned campaign contributions away from any senator who continues to support investigations into the administration. To the most committed base voters, this represents final confirmation that even Republicans with decades of conservative credentials cannot be trusted when the establishment feels threatened by an outsider who challenges their control. Things escalated even further when the White House released a statement at 7:23 a.m. responding to the press conference. The statement called the senators' actions a betrayal of their party and their constituents, claiming that the intelligence assessment they reviewed was produced by career bureaucrats who have opposed this administration from day one. The statement specifically questioned the timing of the assessment's release, suggesting it was deliberately designed to create political problems during an election year, and accused the 7 senators of falling for a coordinated campaign by the intelligence community to undermine presidential authority over national security matters. The response, notably, did not address any of the specific allegations about false statements to Congress or dispute the accuracy of the intelligence assessment's conclusions. Instead, the entire focus was on attacking the credibility of those who produced the assessment and questioning the motives of the senators who found it credible. Stay with me. What comes next will completely reframe how you understand the stakes of this constitutional confrontation. Here's what makes the White House response so revealing and so legally problematic. When your defense strategy consists entirely of attacking the people who uncovered evidence rather than addressing the substance of what that evidence shows, you've essentially conceded that the underlying facts cannot be defended. Every experienced attorney and crisis management professional understands that if you had exculpatory evidence or innocent explanations for the documented conduct, you would lead with that information rather than pivoting to attacks on sources and motives. The fact that the White House statement focuses exclusively on questioning the credibility of career intelligence professionals and the motivations of Republican senators suggests an awareness that the documented evidence is too strong to rebut on the merits. Legal analysts immediately flag this response as potentially creating additional legal problems for administration officials. When you attack witnesses and sources while they are cooperating with congressional oversight investigations, that can be interpreted as witness intimidation or obstruction of justice depending on the specific circumstances and language used. A former federal prosecutor with extensive experience in public corruption cases noted that judges and juries are trained to view attacks on witnesses' credibility as potential consciousness of guilt, particularly when those attacks are not accompanied by any factual rebuttal of the witness's substantive allegations. He emphasized that the law specifically prohibits any effort to influence or impede congressional proceedings through intimidation or threats, and that public statements attacking senators and intelligence officials who are participating in constitutional oversight could potentially fall within that prohibition if they were intended to discourage further investigation or cooperation. This goes far beyond a single intelligence briefing or one set of allegations about false statements. This is fundamentally about whether Congress retains any meaningful ability to conduct oversight of executive branch activities when that oversight might reveal information that is politically damaging. If administration officials can withhold accurate intelligence from congressional overseers, provide false information during classified briefings, and face no consequences as long as they maintain sufficient partisan support to block accountability measures, then the entire framework of checks and balances collapses into pure power politics where might makes right. And once that framework collapses, every subsequent administration will have both the precedent and the incentive to push boundaries even further, secure in the knowledge that partisan loyalty will protect them from consequences regardless of how serious the documented misconduct becomes. If this analysis is blowing your mind, hit that like button right now. Here's where we stand at this exact moment on this Wednesday morning. 7 Republican senators with impeccable conservative credentials have publicly broken with the president after reviewing classified intelligence showing that administration officials allegedly provided false information to Congress. They have demanded appointment of a special counsel, complete intelligence briefings with no executive privilege limitations, and production of all relevant documents within 96 hours. The White House has responded by attacking the credibility of career intelligence professionals and questioning the motives of the senators rather than addressing the substance of the allegations. And political analysts in both parties are describing this as the most significant intra-party revolt against a sitting president since the final days of the Nixon administration. When Republican senators are willing to hold a dawn press conference announcing they can no longer defend actions they describe as violations of constitutional duty, we've entered genuinely unprecedented political territory. If there are no consequences for documented deception of Congress during intelligence oversight proceedings, it establishes a precedent that fundamentally transforms the relationship between the executive and legislative branches. Every legal expert and constitutional scholar understands that once you normalize the withholding of accurate intelligence from congressional overseers who have legal authority to receive that information, there's no mechanism for preventing that deception from expanding in scope and frequency with every subsequent administration. Keep a very close eye on this story over the next 96 hours as the deadline for the senators' demands approaches. Multiple sources indicate that additional Republican senators are reviewing the classified assessment today and considering whether to add their support to the demands outlined in this morning's press conference. White House lawyers are reportedly preparing a formal response that will attempt to justify the discrepancies between intelligence assessments and congressional briefings by claiming that officials had to simplify complex information or that different analysts had different interpretations of the same raw intelligence. And political operatives in both parties are gaming out scenarios for what happens if the 96-hour deadline passes without compliance, including the possibility that the 7 Republican senators will follow through on their threat to block all administration priorities in the Senate. Before we go any further, smash that subscribe button so you never miss critical developments like this that could determine the future of congressional oversight and constitutional accountability. Here's where things stand right now. 7 elected Republican senators have put their political careers on the line by declaring that the president's actions constitute violations of constitutional duty serious enough that they can no longer remain silent. Career intelligence professionals have documented evidence that legal experts describe as meeting the threshold for criminal referral, and the administration's response has been to attack the messengers rather than address the message. This isn't just another political controversy that will fade from the news cycle after a few days. This is a constitutional confrontation that will define whether legislative oversight retains any meaningful authority to constrain executive branch deception. What happens over the next 96 hours could determine whether Congress can still function as a genuine check on presidential power or whether we've entered a new era where partisan loyalty trumps constitutional accountability. Regardless of how serious the documented wrongdoing becomes, the evidence has been reviewed, the demands have been made, the deadline is approaching. Now we wait to see if constitutional principles still carry more weight than partisan calculation. The stakes have never been higher, the evidence has never been more documented, and the choice facing Senate Republicans has never been more consequential for the future of American democracy. Pause for a second and hit that like button if this analysis helped you understand what's really happening in this unprecedented constitutional confrontation.